I think the most critical element, especially when you sit down to create that plan, is stop buying into the beliefs. Let me back up. Stop buying into the limiting beliefs that are being purveyed about the real estate market right now.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Hi everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy. I'm Eric Seemann, Realtor with Keller Williams Heritage in San Antonio, Texas, and I am here with my sister,
Donna Reed, and I'm with Keller Williams Southern Arizona.
In this podcast, we reminisce how our life and upbringing in the small village of Lindsey, Ohio, impacted our lives and careers in real estate in the Southwest states we now call home. We work to connect what made the two houses we both lived in, along with our parents and brothers, and the two additional houses where Donna raised her family decades later, so influential in our careers. We have learned that our conversation certainly takes a lot of turns in every episode, and in the end, we hope we will be successful in providing you some expert knowledge of our markets while we share some history, statistics, or maybe information on where we're from and our local markets that you may not be aware of. So, with that said, Donna, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. So this morning, folks, or this afternoon, or whatever you're watching this, I guess, we have a visitor. I am super excited to have Theresa Barnabei here with us today. Theresa, she has Course Creators under her name here. And I'm going to tell you that I know Theresa because of Course Creators, because of teaching. I know her because of being a bold coach for Keller Williams. So those of you that are KW will know what that is about. I know that she's a Steelers fan. Yes. And I know that she, in her continuing ed, I know that we play a lot of games, which I may or may not be good at, but I love to learn that way. Theresa, that's what I got about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, maybe personally, but a little bit maybe about where you grew up and maybe what your home was like there, and then your time in real estate.
I'd love to. So I grew up in a little town as well called Weirton, West Virginia. Most people have no idea where that's at. But I am minutes from the Pennsylvania border, minutes from the Ohio border. People usually say, well, where's your West Virginia accent? And I'm like, I don't have one because we have so much Pennsylvania influence and so much Ohio influence. And I grew up in what I would say was like a perfect life. I mean, I had both of my parents, which is very unusual. We grew up and lived in the same house until the day my parents passed and we sold it. You know, that stability of that whole area back in there, we were called the Ohio, well, it's like the Ohio Valley, which is the tri-state, right? And so I grew up in a really easy way. Eric and I were talking the other day. I grew up in a steel mill town. Everybody worked in the steel. Wanted to.
And I immediately pictured Flashdance. Theresa was doing the Flashdance scene from.
Exactly.
Awesome.
I think part of that was actually filmed in downtown Weirton or somewhere in Pittsburgh, but whatever. I say it was in Weirton. But I think that what really molded me to be where I am today, if you wanted to make any kind of money or have any kind of career, you did it in the steel mills because there wasn't any projection that someday the steel mills would close down. So everybody put everything that they had into the steel mill and all of the ancillary businesses because of the steel mill. And as I was growing up, I'm like, I got hired one summer to work in the steel mill and I never showed up for my physical because I couldn't imagine myself working in it.
In a steel mill.
The steel mill. And so I told myself as I was growing up, like, then what am I going to do? And I think that was one of the catalysts for moving west, was to have other opportunities other than the steel mill, because that's all I ever knew. But I'm eternally grateful for the steel mill because it fed me, it clothed me, it let me have the childhood that I have, it paid for my college tuition, it gave me all the benefits that most kids would die for today.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see myself in it. And so I moved west and now I live in Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, Theresa, or did you like stay other places before you wound up here? Or
I went
No.
straight from Weirton to Tucson.
Okay.
I had an aunt who was a snowbird out here. So I was going to go to the University of Arizona. So there was a university for my doctorate. There was a university in Georgia, one in Texas, and one in Arizona. So I had a neighbor who was from Georgia. So I went over and I said, hey, tell me what it's like to be in Georgia. And she told me, and I'm like, okay. And then I talked to my aunt. I said, tell me what it's like to be in Arizona. And she said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to show you. And she brought out this photo album. Now, keep in mind, I'm from the steel mill town, right? So it's all gray. It's sooty. There's not a whole lot of sunshine, right? Because of the soot and stuff.
Yeah.
And she showed me these pictures with these gorgeous mountains and the most beautiful blue sky I had ever seen, and the whitest clouds up against the sky. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that exists. And then that's why I picked the University of Arizona because of
you just skipped right over Texas. After that presentation, it's like, I don't need to talk to anybody.
That's awesome. So Theresa, if you go back there now, because I know you do, and you have, has it totally changed because of the steel mills, because of, or whatever? Does the town still exist at the same level, or?
No, it's all shifted. It's funny you say that because I was just back there. My brother took me on a tour and showed me things that were changing, things that I had never paid attention to while I lived there. And, there's a whole steel mill that was on Main Street that was torn down years ago. And every time I drive past it, I still can't believe that it's not even there. It doesn't even exist anymore. But there are other things that are happening because it's on the Ohio River. So the transportation of the Ohio River is still good. And we're just outside of Pittsburgh, so we can have that, what do they call it? Like a bedroom community kind of feel.
Yeah, you can
thank you.
live in Weirton and head up the road to Pittsburgh and work.
Yeah, we're like 35 minutes away from.
Okay.
So it was really cool that he took me around and showed me parts of Weirton that I really never even knew existed and what was still happening in Weirton. Now it's still industrial, it's still.
Right.
People work with their hands back there, which is really cool. And so he showed me a lot of the industry that was an offshoot of the mill, but doesn't need the mill to still be, flourishing. So
it's interesting because where we grew up, a lot of people kids came right out of high school and they worked in the car companies. They worked in the glass industry in Toledo or Detroit or whatever. We had all the automotive. And then, Cleveland was happening, with Cleveland, which was more steel and all that. Our aunt and uncle are in Rochester, where Eastman Kodak was huge, So being a Midwesterner / Easterner, I'm not sure where that little border changes.
Yes.
But I think we had similar lives back there.
But let me interject, perspective. Theresa, you were saying you were from a small town. And it's at one point, looking up some information after we had our conversation the other day, Weirton was up to 28,000 people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Small town for us, our village. I don't know if you had a chance to listen, 599 people, right, Donna, when you left?
499 when I was at home.
Because when she left, she took 100 people with her.
Yeah. So
we had one stoplight,
right.
There were two parts. There was downtown and there was up on the hill. And we had one light up on the hill. That's it. We had a 2-lane highway. We still do. We only still have a 2-lane Pennsylvania Avenue. We have a 2-lane Main Street. It's like.
Yeah.
How big was it? Still at around 28,000 when you were a child, or was it already starting to shrink at that point?
It was in its heyday when I was a child because the mills were.
Okay, so the mills were cranking and going, and we hadn't started buying steel from overseas and everything else that we've.
No, and everybody I knew was working in the mill.
Interesting.
Or had something to do with the mill. Yeah.
Right. Some relationship to that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Eric and I have done in the last 2 or 3 episodes, I think we told you, and I know you've listened a little bit, that we do a little bit of lifestyle, a little bit of house, whatever in this podcast that we're creating and trying to figure out.
Yeah. She asked me the other day who our listeners were, and it's like, I don't know.
2 or 3 people we grew up with. but we talked about, in October, we talked about Halloween and what that was like in a little town. And then we talked about Thanksgiving and memories of that. And then getting our Christmas trees and going out and cutting them in December. And as we come into January, I got to thinking about it. Hallmark has managed to have a holiday in every month of the year, right? There's 1 or 2 reasons that we're supposed to do something. But this month, you and Eric both talked about fair housing.
Yeah.
And so Martin Luther King really does bring up conversation for us related to what we do? If you were gonna, and Eric, I know you're doing some teaching too. So what do you think that we as realtors, as human beings, should be thinking about related to fair housing as we go through the month of January?
So I want to talk about Martin Luther King for a second, because there's something that a lot of people don't know, but his passing, unfortunately, was the catalyst for the Fair Housing Act.
Yes.
LBJ had been trying to get that passed. Nobody would sign it. And when the country was in total distress and riots everywhere, LBJ just went to all these Congress people, I guess that's the right name for them, I don't know, and said, look, I know how to stop this mass hysteria across the country. Let's pass the Fair Housing Act. And it was a measure to stop what was happening in the United States over the assassination of Martin Luther King. So he didn't get to see the results of what he died for, but his death caused it to happen. And so, when you just think about that how much that man had created in his life and upon his death, who are we to not pay attention that everybody has the right to equal housing, that everybody has the right to full enjoyment of that housing? It's like, oh my gosh, even if, no matter, it's so hard because so many people have so many different beliefs. Right. But the fact that we are all human, which was the point that he was trying to make, that we are all human and we all have the right to have a roof over our head, to have warmth and comfort. Who are we to deny anybody that right, that somebody literally died for? Yeah.
What is frustrating to me as I've started teaching and working in that area a little bit more is the way everybody still wants to not have the discussion about it. I'm really surprised in a classroom environment that's relatively small that I try to be, look, we're going to hit this thing head on and we're going to talk about it. And everybody shrinks. Yeah. And we can't talk about it. And that for me is really, really challenging. And of course, I move it forward with San Antonio having so many military personnel and the disabled veterans, and knowing now that the most discriminated class are disabled or differently abled, handy-capable people that before we started, I was talking to Donna about that. And I said, until we started having 4-story apartments, we didn't have elevators. Yeah. Everything in San Antonio is a staircase. And again, it's like, who's going to deny these people? Yet we know it happens all the time and it has to be in writing. It's so frustrating.
If each of us would just look at our own lives and understand how unique and different we are and allow that same compassion to every single person. Everybody has something different. Everybody is a unique individual. We all have our stuff, right? We have our beliefs, we have our color, we have our origin. Look, everybody comes from somewhere. We live in the United States of America. And unless you're Native American, you came from someplace else.
That's correct.
And if we could just all embrace that we're all different, we all come from different places. What makes it so hard to allow and extend that compassion to every single person? And I study this a lot, and I think the only thing is the fear of the unknown. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're going to do to me. I don't know what you're going to say about me. I don't know how you're going to act. I don't know how you're going to affect my neighborhood. And it's all fear. And most fears are unfounded.
And unfounded and biased. It doesn't make any sense. We could go into that a lot more, but it's a whole separate discussion. Yes. But we needed to touch on it.
For me, one of the things when you talked about the stability, after having just come back from Europe again, where I spent a month and I'm like, there's nothing about if you can't get up the stairs. Oh, well, just, sorry, Charlie kind of thing. The combination of fear and not knowing what you don't know. Yeah. So one of my best friends is substantially shorter than me because of polio and because of having a limb shortening surgery, and where her plates are in a pantry at this level, and where the rolling pin on the counter I can do easily, she can't. I have learned so much that I didn't know. You're right. A fear, and in my opinion, a lack of knowledge too. So what we don't know, we can often be afraid of, right? Yeah.
That's a really good point. Like, I never realized handicap parking was so important until my mom was in a wheelchair and I had to get her in and out of the car. Yep. Or holding the door or automatic doors, because, able-bodied, we don't deal with that. Nope. Walk through a door and don't think anything of it. But when you're trying to maneuver an entryway and a door and something in your hand and
it's raining, there was something crazy.
Yeah.
And on top of it, yeah.
It's as you said, Eric, when we do we can talk a little bit more about this, but Theresa, I know you're still doing educating. I know you've kind of morphed into some different business from course creators and all of that. As we enter 2023, one of the reasons I really wanted you to join us is because I am always, here we are goal setting, here we are figuring out what's next, here we are going, is the same thing happening to you that's happening to me? Is Weirton and Lindsey, Ohio, and San Antonio and Tucson, are we all doing the same thing?
Yeah.
So what might you share with listeners about what you think is happening and what we can do as realtors to be the best realtors and the best helpers we can be?
Well, I have an opinion on that.
That's why I asked, Theresa.
First of all, I definitely believe that we should have a plan. And I teach all over the country. I coach people from all over the country in all walks of life. And I have to tell you, the number of people that have a plan, whether it's 5 items or 3 pages.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. At least have a plan, right? And then have a plan on how you're going to execute that. That would be number one. But I think the most critical element, especially when you sit down to create that plan, is stop buying into the beliefs. Let me back up. Stop buying into the limiting beliefs that are being purveyed about the real estate market right now, because we are so far away from mirroring or even looking anything like we did when we were in the debacle in the early 2000s.
Yep.
Right.
But because news sells sensationalism, they have to take a little shift called an increase in interest rates, take a little shift and permeate that. It's going to be the biggest downfall of the real estate market.
Right.
And the reason why I say that we have to rise above that, because if we don't have our own professional knowledge, if we don't have our own market knowledge, if we don't have our own conviction as people on the front line of this industry, it is too easy to get sucked into what everybody else is getting sucked into. And then when a consumer who really wants to buy or sell comes to us, we don't have the inventory, that conviction, that confidence within us to pull it out and say, no, let's have a conversation about what's really happening in the real estate industry. Let's really have a conversation about what's happening in our immediate community, because that's all that really matters.
Right.
They're here looking. They're looking here. They don't care what's happening in.
They don't even
Naperville,
care what's
Indiana.
In your town. They care what's happening in their life.
Right.
And Donna, I want to come back to something that you said, that a lot of times you guys talk about lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
Owning a home is lifestyle. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of home you own fuels
your heart.
that lifestyle, period. Everything about real estate is a lifestyle. And the only reason why people buy a house or sell a house is because it has to match the lifestyle that they're dealing with in that moment. Good and bad. Some people downsize because there's been a death. Some people upsize because there's been a birth. Some people move because there's relocation. Some people just want to be close to family and friends. Whatever it is, it's a lifestyle choice.
Right. Blue sky and white clouds, right, Theresa?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That was my lifestyle choice. And so the media is never going to talk about that. They're going to talk about whatever sells, period.
Yeah.
The problem is we have a bunch of people who are not thinking, including some real estate professionals who aren't thinking and discerning for themselves, that get sucked right into that. And the next thing you know, the sky is falling. And so I can't plan growth in my business. I can't increase the number of clients I want to serve because there's going to be less people out there. No, there's not.
And you know what? This time of year, they don't pay their dues for the next year because they already have decided that it's going to be bad.
Yep.
So you have attrition in which is good for those of us that stay, but the fear is controlling. Yeah.
So we all have attrition. We always have attrition.
Right.
I've been in this business for a really long time. Agents will come and go. Why? Because being in real estate serves their lifestyle. Getting out of real estate serves their lifestyle. Nothing changes. Look, we can't get away from it, right? Because we make our own personal decisions based on what we're going through in our lives and what's most important to us. Okay, so there's always attrition. There's always a cycle. Good real estate, not so good. High interest rates, low interest rates, right? Good inventory, no inventory. Lots of buyers, no. It's all
Oh,
Ride the wave. So if you're a good surfer, you're on that crest the whole time, right? All the way to the shoreline.
And everybody's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? What did you do last time? Oh my gosh, I have to reinvent the wheel. No. Oh my gosh, I have to get back to basics. Yes. Wouldn't it be great? I'm just going to throw this out because you're too out.
Go, coach.
Wouldn't it be great? Not that I'm not passionate about this. Wouldn't it be great if we all just consistently did the basics so we didn't have to get back to the basics? Because if we do the basics consistently, we know we know how to serve people in this industry. If we would just do what we know, puts us in front of those people so we could help them, then we would surf all those waves just perfectly, Eric. If we just stayed with the basics of what we know works, we would surf right over those waves.
Okay, that's going to be my takeaway because it's true. I mean, I don't feel like I changed tremendously year over year. I know where my business comes from. I know how I lead generate. I know what I do. I know what I'm good at. And maybe when I'm not as good at, because I think that's part of learning. But I've never thought of it exactly that way. I've never thought about it like, oh, we're going to get back to basics because for the last 2 years, all you had to do was breathe and you sold a house, right? So because you didn't really do it. I mean, I hate to say that to me doesn't sound right.
But that moved us, Donna, to transactional real estate.
Yes.
I'm going to put a sign in the front yard. It's going to sell. I'm going to be fine. That's transactional real estate. Most real estate professionals really want a career. You want a career, you can never leave the basics.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And we've had recently during some of our team meetings and some of these younger agents, younger than all three of us. And it's like, don't you want to retire when you're 40 years old and go sit on a beach? And I just can't even imagine stopping. I guess if I have to feel like I'm really, really working to feel like I need to retire. There are agents that we all know that are in their 70s and they're still practicing. I mean, we have politicians who are still in office serving. Why can't we have real estate agents? And the idea of going to sip margaritas, as much as I may enjoy one, on a beach every single day, I can't do it. I can't stick my toes in the sand and rest that long.
Yeah. I always thought the all-American dream, look, I've always wanted to own houses and I've owned rental houses for most of my adult life. I always thought that the all-American dream for me was to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it and if I want to do it. And as long as I'm doing what I want to do when I want to do it and if I want to do it, I don't have anything to retire from.
There you go. Yeah. And that is the reason that the Chuck Corriers and the James Tegases and people are still doing it. And that Joy Temmie did it until her last breath, right? Because it's what they love. It's what they're good at. And super
cool. Not a job.
Yeah. No. And I had to look, again, doing a little bit of preparation and not going into a whole lot of the market details. But in Texas, we have a tool where I can actually search every single one of the local boards to see what's happening in their market.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to see what's happening in El Paso, I can go to El Paso. Mm-hmm. And I did all of that and I checked ahead of time and I did the 4 major metropolitan areas, which are Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston area, San Antonio, and Austin. And of all of those markets, only Austin has had a drop in the median price year over year. Every single one of them is still a strong seller's market because inventory is still right around 3 to 3.5 months of inventory. And the prices have gone up year over year. Now varies, but Austin is the only one that it dropped. And honestly, there are going to be people who blame the owner of Twitter for causing that in Austin because he opened his huge giga plant for Tesla and he dropped the price on that again. And no sooner did he open it than he said, yeah, I've overbuilt.
There are always outside forces. Right now, we're calling it the interest rate. Austin can call it Twitter. Austin can call it Tesla. I don't care what you call it. There's always outside influences.
Right.
We can't get wrapped up in that.
No.
Right. We have to keep our eye on what it is that we do for people. And what we do is we help them make transitions in and out of houses. That's it.
Yeah.
We have to do that the best that we possibly can. That's it.
Yeah.
And if you want to fix I'm going to say this, I might take both of you by surprise, but if we want to increase the inventory, if we think that's the problem, low inventory, you want to fix it, stop the doom and gloom. Go tell every single homeowner that interest rates don't affect every single buyer that's out there. Case in point, we need them to talk about, and Eric, you and I kind of talked about this. If you knew what the average number of units that get sold every single month, you just got to look at your market. Are you above that or below that? Because if you're above that, you're still in a really good market. That means that buyers are still out there buying and sellers are out there selling. Yep. And if you're doing more than you typically do, we're still in a really good market.
Yeah.
That word needs to get out. In our area, we're 300 units a month over and above the average. How many of those do you need, real estate agent, to make a difference in your lifestyle?
Yeah, that is almost word for word what we discussed the other night. It's like, how many of those?
All right, we've only got 5 minutes. So, Theresa, I want to ask you a quick question before we wrap it up. Tell everybody who's listening a little bit more about what you're doing right now, because you've done some specific things related to women and business and some coaching, right?
Yes. So everything I've ever done, I've always considered it coaching in one way or another. Coaching in front of the classroom, coaching one-on-one, coaching in a group. I've kind of started to move things online because I understand that my mission on life is to impact people. And I realize the way the world is right now, the way to impact more people is to go online in terms of the personal and professional development. I also understand that people want things at their beck and call. So if you want your own personal development course, you need to be able to get it at 2:00 in the morning if you want. I'm not available, so I'm going to put it online. Yep. So I have ventured into 3 realms of online. Number one is an online product that helps real estate agents know what they need to know. That's called the Success Club. It's a membership. All of these are membership. The second one that I'm creating right now is instructor tutorials, because one of my favorite things to do is to travel the country and teach instructors how to be better instructors so that we impact more agents, so we impact more clients.
Going to try to get you brought here to San Antonio.
Yeah, I'll come in a heartbeat. I love teaching instructors. I just love it. Well, anyway, so I'm putting tutorials online because once I drop into a city, I could teach for 6 hours and then I leave and then they're like, how did she tell me to do that? And I can give them all the tools, I can give them all the snapshots, I can give them everything in their playbook, but they're still like, how did she say we should do that? So I'm doing tutorials online so they can access that. The biggest project that I'm working with, Donna, and that's what you alluded to, is the project with women. I want to help empower women to realize that what they want in life and what they can have in life is just as important as everything that they've sacrificed for other people, right? So if I want to support my partner in their job, guess what? Supporting you in your own life is just as important. Right. Raising children, it's just as important to that is getting what you want in life. And so it's a big job. Yeah. And I'm up for the task. And so that component is personal and professional development, whoever wants that, but mostly personal development. There's a live coaching component. It's huge. And I'm in love with everything I do. So all 3 of those with course creators and TV consults, the coaching component is, we're
so fortunate.
Blessed.
Have you named your program that you're doing specifically with the women? Does that have a?
Yes, it's called The Making of Your Life.
There you go.
And you know what?
To help them make their life what they want it to be.
When we put this on YouTube, I'll make sure that I listen to some of this and tag some of those things so that we have that verbiage out there. And with that, we kind of need to end it because we have 2 minutes. So thank you all for joining us today, for listening. And just remember, if you're in Arizona, specifically the Tucson area, that I am here to help you. And that if you happen to be in Texas, the San Antonio area, that Eric is there to help. And that we have a network all over the world, all over that we can refer to. So it doesn't matter where you live, where you're coming from, where you're going to, we have an extensive network. We hope that you learn from us, that you enjoy your time with us, and that you consider us real estate advisors, and that we can impact your lives. And Theresa, thank you so much for being with us today. I greatly appreciate it. And remember, it may be simple, but it ain't always easy. So until next time, I'm Donna.
And I'm Eric.
And we are
Real Simply.
We're so bad at this.
Thanks, y'all.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
Annabelle, and I want to thank you for investing your valuable time in listening to Real Sibling. It Ain't Easy. I hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast with my Grandpa Eric and Aunt Grandma. Please take the time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes Grandpa put together with their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and websites. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.